This is Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com, www.commonlawyer.com, and this is commenting on our law of the land, our laws of nature and of nature's God, our due process in the Bible.
Is not this a better way of making the laws of a country than either of those we first considered? Now, you have to go back and listen to the previous presentations to find out what those are. I'm not going to do that. I want you to go listen to them if you haven't heard them. Listen to what the answer is that Stansbury says is the answer to this question. It is hard to conceive how greater care could be taken that no wicked, unjust, oppressive, hasty, or unwise law should pass. There is full time to consider whatever is proposed, such fair opportunity to oppose it if wrong, and improve it if imperfect. So many persons, and from so wide a space a country, must agree in approving such a law proposed, that it is scarcely possible anything very injurious can be enacted as law in America, or at least, if it is, that a different form of government would have prevented it. Now this, friends, this answer is patently, has proven in spades patently false. He says, I look at the Constitution, I look at all the due process there, and I say, how in the world is it possible that a evil or a bad law could ever be enacted into America? Well, I should say this for him. If due process is truly followed, I guess now that I think about it, I agree with him. Due process. What's due process? Well, that's just the process that's due and owing to all concerned. Our Constitution of the United States is not about substantive law. It's about process. It doesn't tell you what laws to pass or what to say or what's right or what's wrong. It just tells you, here's how you go about doing it. And that's what he's saying here. He's saying, I can't imagine. There's so much process. That's really what he's saying. How could a bad law pass or get through the cracks? Well, process is the key. Men are too evil. They think of evil things they want to do. But if the process is right, the process is complete, and we follow the process, then the evil will be siphoned off. It's all a matter of process. Our common law is due process, period. It doesn't include due process. That's what it is. And our Constitution of the United States is a brief of common law government. It's all about process. The how, not the what. Well, I don't think people ought to be able to murder people. Well, that's the what. How do you decide who has murdered and who hasn't? That's called due process. I don't believe people should be committing treason like the Democrats are doing. I hear people say stuff like that. Is that a good idea? That's a good idea, but how do you decide who's committed treason? You follow due process. Who has and who hasn't. How's government supposed to function? Well, that's all a matter of how, not what are they supposed to do or decide. Our Constitution tells us how our elections are supposed to occur. There's a process, very precise process. When DJ Trump was elected and then everybody said he wasn't, what happened? Well, they thwarted, they hijacked the process. That's the problem. Always the process. I want a tractor that'll pull a 4, 5, 6 bottom plow. That's the end result. The plowing's the end result. But the process that goes on in that diesel motor and that old Oliver tractor, that Alice Chalmers we used to have, the process that goes on in that motor, everything in there, the process has to work right. One little part out of sync, and then power is sacrificed to the point you probably blow the engine up. You ever hear about, I think he threw a rod? Yeah, I've heard people say that. I think he threw a rod. Well, a rod's a little thing in a motor, not very big. It's a push rod. Goes up and down, pushes this little thing on a rocker on the top that has a spring under it, and that's what makes the valves work and letting the stuff out of the piston at exactly the right time and letting other fuel in and putting exhaust out, and those are the rods. The timing on the rods has to be in sync with 4, 6, 8 other pistons. Everything has to be just right. The process has to work right, or there is no power to pull the plow. I think people that are child pornographers and child molesters should have their throats slit, should be hung, whatever you think. Well, that's the end. That's the outcome. That's the end result. That's not the process. And the end result will not be reliable. Will not be reliable without due process. I went into the chamber of the United States House of Representatives back when you could just walk in. When I was in politics, I was running for office. I spent half my time in Washington, D.C. Why? Well, that's where you go where the fundraisers are, and you go meet people to get money. Can't run without money. That's the part of the process, you see. You got to have, and you got to know how to navigate and know who to talk to and how the process works. And by the way, I discovered, not knowing it, it's a very specific process. Has developed over the years. It's the process. You get in that world and you want money, you got to follow the process. You want to court the little lady? Who was it said that? Famous line. Hey, Sparky, I'll tell you what to do if you want to court the little lady. Remember that? Sparky? You got to be a straight shooter if you want to court the little lady. Listen, if you want to court the little lady, young men, any young men out there, maybe some old men want to court the lady. You know as well as I do, you older guys, younger guys, I want to tell you something. There's a process. And if you don't try to follow some of that process, you're not going to be successful. If you are successful without following the process, in 10 years, you're going to wish you had to follow the process. Oh, I shouldn't speak in every case, but yeah, a lot of cases, that's what happens. A lot of losers in this world thought they were winners. Abe Lincoln was a loser. Loser. He wanted the girl. He got her. Destroyed his family, destroyed his life. Married God. She was a pistol. Terrible. Horrendous. Scary. I'll say this about Abe Lincoln's motto was, when you make a bad deal, just hug it tighter. He did that with her. There was a process he was supposed to follow. And I know for a fact he didn't follow it. Well, I know for a fact I wasn't there, but I've talked to people, some of his extended family. They're from back in my neck of the woods. You know, Lincoln was born a Southerner. In the year 1809, in a cabin in Kentucky. Same place, by the way, same year, same place that the president of the Confederacy was born. Now, that seems kind of odd, doesn't it? He was also born in Kentucky in 1809. Both of them. In a cabin, like, what was it? Gerald Ford. Politicians say the dumbest things, and I'm not down on Gerald so much, but he became president, remember, when Nixon resigned. And he went to a Lincoln Day dinner once. I didn't hear him say this, but I did hear him when he came to our neck of the woods and spoke when he was vice president then. They wouldn't let him. Local state university. I went to the meeting, had a hard time getting in. Of course, cops everywhere. He tried to talk about some things and just be nice, but the crowd was screaming at him about the tapes and it never got anywhere. But one time he was doing a Lincoln Day dinner. He got all worked up talking about Abe Lincoln. And he said, Abe Lincoln was a man born in a log cabin he built with his own hands. That's a true story. When you're making speeches, you say stupid things. Maybe you've heard me say some stupid things. I know I have. That's why I try not to listen to myself that much. It's too embarrassing. Well, I think maybe I'll say something right, and I hope that people remember that more than the things I say that are just, as they say, bass-ackwards. Bass-ackwards, yeah, that's what they say, or cattywampus. That's what they say at home. All comes down. Oh, I was in the chamber of the U.S. House of Representatives late one night. Well, we stopped out in the parking lot. It was midnight, about midnight. I was getting ready to go back to the hotel or wherever I was staying. I had a little Chevy S10 pickup truck. It's been 30 years ago. Wow, that seemed like a long time, but it didn't feel like it. Pulled up in the parking lot, and there wasn't anybody there. It was raining, drizzling. I tried to say drizzling. I put the D on the front of rain, draining. That means drizzling, rain, cold. Wintertime in Washington, D.C. is, well, drizzling rain a lot. Some snow sometimes. A lot of cherry trees around, come out in the spring, but I saw the lights on in the Capitol building. I'm sitting in the parking lot and I'm looking at the Capitol building of the United States and the lights are on in the House of Representative chamber. I said, let's go see what's going on. So I walked over there. We got out and had our umbrella. We walked over there, walked around the back of the building, walked in. Back then, you could just walk in. Isn't that something? I walked in. Wow, how times changed. Walked in, went to the stairway, went up in the balcony up above the House of Representatives, and I remember seeing that red-headed Gephardt. Remember him from Missouri? He was air. Let's get to this next question. What happened in the chamber? We're talking about due process, and why is it we got so many laws that are so bad? This guy's saying, well, how could we have a bad law with all this process and all these things that have to be done before a law can be passed? I'll tell you how it happens. I saw it happen. So I'm sitting up in the chamber, and there's a pile of papers up on the clerk's desk down where the main man is supposed to be presiding, about yay high. Looked like it had a string around it or something. And Gephardt, he's walking around talking to people. And two, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 others walking around, nothing really happening. There are not many people there. It's midnight about. Well, I found out later that very night, that pile of papers sitting up on the table up front was Clinton's crime bill. Had a 10,000% tax on ammunition. They brought it in at midnight, so nobody'd have time to look at it. They could ram it through. Listen to me. Where legislation is measured, where a piece of legislation is measured by the pound instead of by the page, that's a violation of due process. Nobody's going to read it. Nobody. Not that long ago, President Dwight David Eisenhower signed a piece of legislation. I think it was 32 pages long. 32 pages long. That piece of legislation established the interstate system in America. 32 pages long. If you write it right, that's all you need. If you're measuring legislation by the pound, stack of papers this high, nobody's going to know what's in it, and if they try to find out, it's going to create more confusion than it is elucidation. Interstate highway system works. They started building it back in the 50s, and they got it done, some of it, not until the 80s, I think. Where I lived, the Cumberland Road became the new interstate, the old Cumberland Road we had. That didn't get finished until the mid-70s, maybe a little later, but I remember the trucks were hauling. They found a limestone deposit and to make the concrete, and the trucks were 24 hours a day for years. I driving through that little town where I went to high school. never stopped because they were hauling both ways from Terre Haute clean to Effingham, hauling from that gravel right outside of that little town. It wasn't a gravel pit, it was a limestone quarry making concrete. Well, that interstate system worked well. You know, Eisenhower, when he was just graduated from West Point, he was a young officer and he was on a convoy. Of course, trucks were a new thing then, but they had them before about 1914, 1915. They had trucks in the Army. They were newfangled things. They had other things. So he was on a convoy. And the idea was to determine how long it would take, in case the railroads were not available, to get men and materials from the East Coast to the West Coast by truck. And they made it. It took over a month, if I remember, 40-some days. Roads were bad. Fuel wasn't available. And in his mind, as a young man, he said, we can do better than this. The automobile, the truck, is going to take over America. He could see that. And we need a highway system that ties us together for internal infrastructure, for commerce, but even just as importantly, in case we are invaded or attacked, we need roads to take materials from one place to the other if railroads are not available. Now, the interstate system has taken over the freight from the railroads. You know, at first it was all river. The rivers were carrying the most of the freight. By the way, don't think that's done. It's not. No, our coal and lumber and hay and hogs, all sorts of things are transported. Grain, oil, fuel are transported. Coal, I said that, are transported by river barge, and that's a big saving of money. But then after that, the railroads came, and they captured the business of the rivers. It was cheaper to run, and this happened pretty early on. I mean, even in the late 1800s, it was cheaper to haul freight from Chicago to New Orleans than it was to send it down the Mississippi River. Hard to believe, but no, it's really true, and you can go back and read the figures. I've done that. I don't remember what all the figures were exactly. I do remember I looked at the charts, and no. That's why the railroads became so prominent in America. But then after that, once the interstate system came in, of course, things were being hauled by truck. But once the interstate system came in, truck has been the cheapest way. Railroads have not been the cheapest way. Used to be the railroads would take them to a certain location, trucks would pick things up and haul it out to where it had to go from the train stations. That's not true anymore. But the legislation for the interstate commerce, the interstate system in America, 32 pages long, legislation that's this thick, like Clinton's crime bill, measured by the pound and not the page, is a violation, friends. Watch me. A violation of due process. Why? Because that's not the way to make things work. That won't work. It doesn't work right. And one of the things that the Trump administration is trying to do, I don't know how far they'll get, is to try to keep legislation, try to find a way to keep legislation to one subject and not have all these riders you stick on while you're making deals. That's confusion. That's not due process. If you have a contract that's 40 pages long and you have a contract, just you with a massive billion-dollar company, and it's 50, 60, 70 pages long, that is a violation of due process, and you may be able to get out of that contract. Why? Because that much talk is too much. It's confusion. Nothing but confusion. Our Constitution of the United States is one large page, one piece of paper. Magna Carta is called Magna Carta because it's magna, that means big in Latin, and it's carta. That's a word that means white, like a white piece of paper, a white piece of vellum. So carta, charter, same word as charter, came to mean one piece of paper. Magna Carta is on one piece of vellum. Oh, the copies we have, there are more than one copy around England. Where do we get off having Clinton's crime bill? Again, I was there, I saw it. And I began to thinking seriously about due process, and I'd read cases about how that works. How many commandments do we have in the Bible? 600, you hear people say, oh, there are only 614 commands in the Old Testament law of Moses. That's not true. No, there's 10. Everything's categorized under them. And that count is off anyway. That's 600 and whatever they say. I've heard that all my life. It's not true. I went through and tried to count them one time. That wasn't it at all. Let's do one more question. Are there not some evils which attend this mode? Answer. This is question 100. Nothing of human contrivance is wholly free from some defect or other. Nothing of human contrivance is free from some defect. And in time of war, when the public danger is great, and it is needful that government should act not only wisely, but rapidly, some disadvantage may be found to arise from so deliberate a method of passing every law. But it is far better to put up with this than to lose the precious blessing of so free and safe a mode of legislation. Listen, again, our jurisdiction as mere mortal men and women is process, not outcome. Our jurisdiction, our right, our duty is to ensure due process. It is not our duty to dictate the outcome. It is not even our duty to set the standards for outcome. We are to stay away from outcome. We are not to be trusted with determining what is crime and what isn't. Let me give you an example. Oh, God said, I'll take care of the outcome. You follow the process. And if you follow the process, the outcome will be reliable. Common lawyers still say, I've said it. Good process, reliable result. No due process or lacking due process, the result is not reliable. There hasn't been an opportunity that makes sure that all of the truth on this matter is aired. Aired, A-I-R. That will prevent E-R-R. Never said anything in court. Never said anything in court. Except, wait a minute. That's not fair. I don't get paid. Lawyers don't get paid to make decisions. Did you know that? No, judges get paid to make decisions. Juries, I should say better. Juries get paid. No, they don't get paid much. But juries, they get paid a little. Juries are there to make the decision. My job is to ensure that the process is fair, that everybody gets an opportunity. Everybody's been put on notice. That's all we think about. Used to. I don't know what they do now. You go to law school. First thing you do, you study due process the first year. That's all you study per year. That dominates everything. Not definition of burglary and murder. That's all outcome stuff. What's the standard for adopting children and what's the court supposed to? That's all outcome stuff. Fraud, that's outcome stuff. What is the process? And we in America, more than anyone in the world, pay attention to process as a matter of law more than anything else, as a matter of that our law demands. And when it comes to making legislation, there is a process. Our Constitution of the United States is a brief of common law government. That means due process. How are we to go about making laws? And if you don't follow the process, you're going to get this stuff like the Clinton, Slick Willie crime bill. Slick Willie. Who was it? Pelosi? That crazy old woman. It's not nice to say those kind of things, but that woman, the damage is too devastating. She's a crazy old woman. People used to call them witches. She's insane. She has lost her faculties. Did she ever have them? I don't know. She grew up in a crime family. She's the one that said with a goofy laugh, and this is really her. She really meant what she said. I believe she's that nutty. Well, we've got to pass the health care bill so we can see what's in it. Well, that's right. It's in a big pile up there in the front, and nobody knows what's in it. We pass it, we'll start to use it. We'll looking at it and find out what's in it. Let's get it passed and see. She really wanted to do that. She thinks that's the way it's supposed to work. She did not have a clue about due process. But let me ask you, men, women out there listening, do you really understand? Do you really grasp? Does it really hit home to you that process is not some things to us mere mortal men and women? God says it's everything. We have no business talking about the outcome. God will take care of the outcome. We've got the standards already. We don't have to even do that. Isn't it funny? It is. How is it? The devil's very clever, and his method has never changed. How is it that he gets us to the point that we're doing insane things? Think of this. Ostensibly, although it was changing, the states were giving the woman, the female, the vote back in the late 1800s. And it was the western and the southern states, the rural areas, that were doing that. Up in New England and New York, they weren't doing that. No, they're too racist in those places. Who are the biggest racists in the country today? Privileged white women. Privileged white women. I say that on the authority of Justice Clarence Thomas of the U.S. Supreme Court. He said he discovered when he went to Yale, being from down there in no place, South Carolina, Pinpoint, South Carolina, that the biggest racists in the country are privileged white women. Yeah. They talk a big line, oh, no, we're not ready. They'll go to great lengths to try to show they aren't, but he said they are. The truth is they don't even want to get close to people like me. Of course, he married a woman, a white woman. I'm not making an opinion about interracial marriage. I'm making this point. I'm making this single point. Privileged white women, Nancy Pelosi, are the greatest racist in the country. And he said, I can show you that. And he gave examples and told stories of it. Read his book on his life. It's worth reading to understand America a little more and what has gone on. He's a product of affirmative action. He just tells it all. Here's how it happened. It's important we look at that too. That's up front and center right now, affirmative action. What has that done to us? Started out, well, the freed Negro slaves, they need an opportunity too. The other people of other color, they need an opportunity. Well, back then we were following the one drop rule. You got one drop of colored blood in your veins and you're a Negro. That's what the laws in the states said. Are we going to follow that rule? Now we got a white woman, a lily white woman, what's her name? Elizabeth Warren, saying, I'm part Indian. I get privileges. Well, how many drops of Indian blood you got in your veins, Elizabeth? Does it really make any difference? I'll tell you what, friends, this has gotten out of hand. You see, it used to be, well, you folks need a break. That didn't work. Started in the 1960s. The dormant civil rights laws of the late 1800s lay asleep from the 1860s and 70s clear up to the 1950s and 60s. People didn't pay any attention to them. Then they resurrected them. Now they're trying to apply them to everybody. Oh, you're from India. Oh, you're part, like there was that gal running for vice president. First she said she was a Negro. Then she said she was an Indian from India. But she couldn't decide which one. It depended upon what crowd she was talking to. You see, that doesn't work. And the Bible says that doesn't work. The Bible says there shall be one law for everybody within the territorial boundaries of your country. Nobody is special, except to say we're all special in our own way, but nobody, the general welfare of the federal government, nobody gets a little bit of money over here that you don't get, and you get free vaccines, and you get this, and you have a different color, and you wrote on a form that you're part Choctaw or Cherokee or some baloney like that. Oh, I've been around these Indian towns all over, tribal towns all over the country. It's the same deal. Well, are you tribal? You don't look it. Well, I am though. I got my card. I'm quarter blood. But my kids, they got the card because their dad was there. They all that doing all these calculations of blood. That is evil, friends. Evil. The Bible says it's evil. The Bible says there shall be one law, one standard. One standard for everybody. Rich man, poor man, and everybody in between. Do not be afraid of the rich man. Do not favor the poor man, the Bible says. God is no respecter. Here's the way the Hebrew text puts it. God is no respecter of faces. See your face? Oh, there's a black face coming at me. Whoa, you get it. You got to be treated special. No. God said, I don't do that. And I don't want any of the jury members in your country or any of the judges doing that either. No. Equal dignity. Do we recognize the differences? Yes, we do. And we recognize, I used to talk about how much I appreciate our neighbors in the South here on our southern border. Why? Well, they gave us the taco and the enchilada. Woo! That stuff's good for the gizzard. I didn't know what it was till I got grown and moved to California because I had to go there. I was working for my uncle. I ever tell you that story about when I went to work for my uncle? Went to California. Next thing I was in the southeast part of Asia, and then I was in northern Asia. I was all over. Uncle Sam. But I found out what tacos and enchiladas were, and I liked them. And I ran into this lady out there, ended up marrying her. And she worked in a big hospital. And she's told me, she said, I've never seen a Mexican on the colon cancer ward in the hospital. I've never seen a Mexican on the colon cancer ward. I said, no kidding. Of all different kind of people, which ones do you see? Well, the black people, they're on the colon cancer ward more than anybody, but not the Mexicans. Would it have anything to do with the difference between eating chitlins and gravy and fried chicken and eating tacos and enchiladas and hot peppers? I don't know. That's just what I reported to me. If somebody worked in a hospital, it does make a difference how you eat. But when it comes to the law, there's no distinguishing. Everybody's held to the same standard, and everybody gets treated the same, and they get the same opportunity. How you do that? Well, the government. I'm just talking about the government. I'm not talking about anybody else. You can do whatever you want. You can use whatever words you want to describe other people. That's none of my business. If I don't like it, I'll get away from you. But the government, they don't have that option. The law is to be applied, and nobody's being to be given extra money because they got, like Elizabeth Warren claims she claims she's a Cherokee or something. I don't know. Silly, isn't it? That's where affirmative action will take you. That's where affirmative action will take you. Why was women's suffrage such a big push to get that amendment in the Constitution? It was happening anyway. That's a state issue, friends. That is not according to our Constitution, that's not a federal government issue. The vote, the states do what they want. That was the issue that came up in Donald Trump's election. The states can decide what they want to do when it comes to the due process of voting within the restrictions of our Constitution of the United States. Well, they pushed for the woman to have the vote on the federal level to get it in the Constitution. Why? Friends, it's just history. It's just what happened. Why'd they do it? Because they wanted prohibition. The evil empire. Why did they want prohibition? They knew if they could get the women fired up women don't like men anyway, and then get them fired up, especially the left-wing wackos and the lesbians, which were the leaders in that suffrage movement back during World War I. Get them fired up. They hate drinking. They hate men. They want to destroy maleness is what they want to do, so we'll give them the vote, and they'll help pass this amendment to get prohibition in place. So who helped them? Well, then the preachers all saw, well, the women are all for prohibition, and they're getting now fired up to clamor for the vote so they can push this through as a constitutional amendment. So all the preachers got it. Billy Sunday, he saw that the women wanted that, and once they got rolling, he's going to preach to them. And he was all prohibition, all this prohibition all over. It came out of the churches because the women were running the men. That's what happened. They thought they were having clout. They were being encouraged, the suffrage movement. The devil's clever, though. What happened out of all that? Prohibition. And what did prohibition give us? Massive power to the federal government to enforce this constitutional so-called amendment, which is a substantive outcome amendment. It has nothing to do with process. It doesn't belong in our Constitution. Our Constitution's a matter of due process. Well, that gave us the FBI, and all the other alphabet soup bureaucracies became popular. All sorts of enforcement that are now clamping down on us and destroying our ability. We're afraid to move. Try to cut down a tree in your front yard. See if somebody doesn't complain and send some bureaucrat out so you can't cut down your tree. Yeah. Well, I'm just laying for some people. If God gives me the opportunity, I want to get rid of them. Now, we have an opportunity here. Get rid of them. Get rid of their power. Get rid of their bureaucracy. Fire them. Government's way too big. People say, oh, Brent is anti-government. That's what they used to say to me when I was running for office. And I'd say, do we really have to worry about government ending? Like, if I'm anti-government, government's going to go away. That ain't going to happen. But I want to make it. If I'm anti-government, you got to be a little bit extreme and say, I want this stopped. I want to reduce it as much as possible. People look to government to solve their problems. They do not look to themselves. You got a problem with your neighbor, what do? You call some bureaucrats. You call the sheriff. You call the government. And what people used to do is they'd take their neighbor to court and settle the matter according to the law, not according to some bureaucratic code. We had a guy that had hogs at home. And this whole thing got started here in recent years. And boy, some of them, I call them old biddies in town, got all fired up about the man raising hogs. They're going to stop him. Because that's why? Hard on the environment, they said. Boy, they had the whole community in uproar. They organized, just like the suffragettes. They organized, they're going to stop this man from making a living. I mean, people want to eat bacon. It does taste good. Yeah, they got the job done. Well, let's go to the book of Jude. What we're going to do, did we get 100 done?
Well, thank you for joining us. This is Brent Allen Winters, commonlawyer.com.